Hey guys, what's up? I'm Erin and welcome back to the channel. So here's how this video came about. The other day I was researching for another topic, and you know how Google has that section that says people also ask? Well, under that section, I saw the question that said, can I retire at 62 with $400,000 in a 401k? And my first thought was, this question is gold. This is something we can really dig into, and it really goes to the heart of what so many people are wondering. So that's exactly what we are going to do in today's video. We're going to break down what it might look like to retire with $400,000 in your 401k. First and foremost, here's the short answer. Yes, you can absolutely retire at 62 with $400,000. People do it all the time. In fact, most people retire with far less. The median account balance for those at the age of 62 is about half that number. So the real question isn't can you, but rather it should be what kind of retirement does it buy you? Because simply saying yes doesn't provide any context, and context is everything and necessary to make a 10 to 15 minute YouTube video. So let's paint the picture. First, let's look at Social Security. If you claim benefits at 62, the average monthly check is about $1,300. Because if you claim early, you're locking in a reduced benefit compared to waiting to your full retirement age to claim. Still, $1,342 a month works out to about $16,100 a year. So that becomes your income floor. No matter what happens in the market, this is your money that shows up every single month. Next comes the $400,000 portfolio. And here's where I think we need to make a distinction. I don't think we should be asking, can you retire with this portfolio? A better question is, what kind of income can this portfolio reasonably provide? The most common safe withdrawal rates we often hear talked about are 3%, 4%, and 5%. This gives you a reasonable amount that you can pull from your portfolio without running out of money too quickly. But let's layer in some nuance here. I'm going to layer in a couple assumptions beyond just a starting withdrawal rate. First and foremost, spending patterns. Retiree spending tends to decline over time at an average rate of about 0.5% a year. And that's not to say that spending can never go up. Certainly, as you get to the end of life, for many people, healthcare costs do increase. But in every other category, we tend to see a decline in spending. People travel less, they spend less, they buy less, they tend to simplify. So for these scenarios, we're going to start with those safe rates of withdrawal. We're going to do a 3%, a 4%, and a 5%. We're going to give our retiree an inflation adjustment every single year, but we're also going to factor in that they reduce their spending at a rate of 0.5% every single year. The great news is Social Security doesn't decline. Those checks keep showing up every single month with their inflation adjustments on an annual basis. So when we see a decline in spending, this strictly shows up on our portfolio draws. And this is great news for us as investors because it takes the pressure off our investments. That's a total win. We also want to consider portfolio returns. We'll assume our retiree has a balanced portfolio and that they're able to capture a real inflation-adjusted 5% rate of return. It's optimistic, but reasonable for planning assumptions. With all of these assumptions in place, we can now see how a $400,000 portfolio stacks on top of Social Security. We'll explore what the different income streams look like at different withdrawal rates. We'll explore how long each portfolio would last, and really, and importantly, how livable this might be in retirement as an income. First, let's start with the 3% withdrawal rate. On a $400,000 portfolio, that gives us $12,000 in the first year. Now remember our assumptions. Each year, withdrawals increase with 3% inflation, but we also taper spending down by 0.5% per year, while the portfolio earns a steady 5% return. Under these conditions, this portfolio would last for 75 years. So it's safe to say that this portfolio is built for life and beyond. It's safe to say you're not going to run out of money with these assumptions. The next question, which is just as important, what does this actually mean in terms of income? From Social Security at 62, our retiree is receiving $1,300 a month or just over $16,000 a year. Then we add in the $12,000 income from investments, and the total income for this retiree would be just over $28,000 $28,000. Now, is $28,000 a year enough to live the retirement you want? Well, it depends on your situation, your location, your housing, your cost of living, but it's safe to say that this would be a very lean retirement. But here's where things can really change. Let's say we have a two-person household and each person has the same Social Security benefit. Well, these numbers look quite different. Instead of $16,000 a year from Social Security, now we have $32,000 a year just from Social Security alone. Then you add in the $12,000 from investments, and we have a household that has a $44,000 a year income. This is a pretty significant shift and paints a much more comfortable retirement for many retirees and really speaks to the power of being a part of a dual income household. Now, what about a 4% withdrawal rate? That's going to give us $16,000 a year from the portfolio. With this plan, with $16,000 in that first year, we're going to have all our same assumptions. 3% inflation on an annual basis, decline in spending, 0.5% per year, portfolio is capable of earning a 5% rate of return. This $400,000 portfolio would last for about 41 years before being depleted. So 41 years of withdrawals. If you retire at the age of 62, this portfolio is going to get you to 103. Personally, I would call that a safe portfolio. And honestly, I'm more comfortable with at least a 4% withdrawal rate, especially you can go higher if you're willing to introduce guardrails. Now let's break down the income picture for a single individual. Social Security and investments are each about $16,000, giving you a total income of $32,000 a year. That's a pretty meaningful jump from the 3% withdrawal scenario, especially when you're at lower income levels. Each $100 or $1,000 increase exponentially increases your quality of life. Now, what about a dual beneficiary household? Two Social Security checks at $32,000 a year, investments coming in at $16,000. Well, now the total household income is about $48,000 a year. Now, for many, that may start to feel like a very comfortable level of income, but of course, it depends on your expenses. Do you live in a modest cost of living state? Are you debt-free? It depends on what your situation looks like. But if you meet these criteria, if you live in that modest cost of living state, if you are debt-free, well, this might be very doable for the retirement you want. Let's expand on this 4% scenario for a moment. Suppose our retiree is a military veteran with a $35,000 annual pension. First off, if that's you, thank you for your service, but also layering in this pension with Social Security and with investment draws, that makes the income profile in retirement much more appealing, whether you're a single household or a dual beneficiary household. So here's the breakdown for an individual. With all three income sources, Social Security, a 4% draw on investments, and a $35,000 annual military pension, all of a sudden, the total income for this household is $67,000 a year. And for that dual beneficiary household, two Social Security checks, one military pension, and investments, the total household income is over $83,000 a year. That is a really dramatic shift in income. All of a sudden, once you layer in this pension, we have an income of $70,000 or $80,000 a year. That can make your retirement incredibly comfortable. Now, of course, not everyone has access to a pension, but if you do, that puts you in a really good position in retirement. All right, let's push it one step further and look at a 5% withdrawal rate. That means $20,000 a year from investments. We have our $20,000 portfolio with all of the same assumptions, taking out $20,000 in year one. This portfolio would last 29 years before being depleted. Now, if you're retiring at the age of 62, 29 years is going to get you a portfolio that lasts to the age of 91. Now, do you feel comfortable with this projection? Personally, I like to err on the side of caution, and I like to build a portfolio that's going to last at least until the age 100. But it really depends on your risk tolerance. Here's how that income stacks up. For a single income earning household, we have $16,000 a year from Social Security, $20,000 a year from investments. That gives our household an income of $36,000 a year. For a dual beneficiary household, we now have $32,000 a year from Social Security, $20,000 from investments, total household income over $52,000 a year. Here's the bigger picture. Some people might look at these numbers and say, that retirement looks totally doable. Other people might look at these numbers and say, that retirement feels impossible. It's because it's so individualized. It depends on your expenses. It depends on how you invest, your risk tolerance, and what you want your lifestyle to look like in retirement. Now let's add in another layer for comparison, because you don't have to lock yourself into one withdrawal rate for your entire retirement. With mild adjustments over time, you can reflect how retirement actually works. Think about it this way. Most people tend to spend more aggressively early on in their retirement. They're healthy, they're traveling, they're checking items off that bucket list. Later on, throughout retirement, spending tends to taper. What if we built that into our plan? For example, let's take our $400,000 portfolio and set it up like this. Years 1 through 8, ages 62 through 70, you withdraw 5% of the portfolio, inflation adjusted, every single year. Years 9 through 18, ages 70 to 80, you drop down to a 4% inflation adjusted withdrawal. And then year 19 onward, so age 80 and beyond, you settle into a 3% withdrawal that is inflation adjusted. All the while, this portfolio continues earning that steady 5% rate of return. Under this tiered withdrawal plan, your $400,000 portfolio would last about 76 years before running out of money. To me, that is an incredibly safe portfolio. Most people don't have a retirement that lasts 70 plus years. And I really like the idea of building in more aggressive spending early on in your retirement, because those really do tend to be your most expensive years. That's when you're more active, you're traveling, you're entertaining, and doing the things you want to do while you still have the energy and the health to do them. Then once you get into your 80s, spending tends to decline in practically every single category, whether that is transportation, travel, entertainment. We just see that spending tends to taper over time. People in their 80s have less of a desire to spend. Now, the one area where we may see an increase in spending later in life is healthcare, but data consistently shows us that spending tends to decline in every single other category, and those declines are enough to offset the increase in spending in healthcare. So we still see a decline in overall spending. So if you're willing to build a more tiered approach, this might truly align with how retirees actually spend. I'm going to introduce one more hypothetical here that's probably going to get a lot of pushback, just to really test the limits of what's possible. What if you withdrew 4% of your portfolio every single year? We factored in that decline in spending at a rate of 0.5% for the first 3 decades. We'll also allow our retiree to have an inflation adjustment, but what if this portfolio could capture a real 8% rate of return on an annual basis? It's incredibly aggressive, I know, but what if it were possible? Well, under those conditions, that portfolio would essentially never run out of money. Your withdrawals are low enough, your compounding is strong enough that your balance just keeps growing and growing and growing. 30 years into retirement, that $400,000 would have grown to nearly $1.7 million. That's pretty incredible. Now, is it realistic? It depends. It depends on the market performance. It depends on your risk tolerance. It depends on how much you're comfortable holding in equities. It depends on your ability to stick with the plan through volatility. When it comes to market returns, there are no guarantees. But I think we do really have a strong argument for these safe rates of withdrawal, a 3%, 4%, or 5%, and the ability, as long as you're willing to hold a significant portion in equities, to have a portfolio that not only survives the length of your entire retirement, but one that continues to grow. And remember, in today's environment, you can already lock in 4% plus just on a cash account. If you combine that with a diversified portfolio and you go into retirement completely debt-free, your dollars might stretch pretty darn far, especially if you keep your fixed expenses low. Maybe you go into retirement with a completely paid off home. Maybe you're driving a completely paid off car. All of a sudden, you might find that you can live on a very modest income in retirement. So, can you retire at 62 with $400,000 in your 401k? Absolutely. People do it all the time. How comfortable that will be, well, that depends on your situation. It depends on your expenses. It depends on your lifestyle. It depends on your other income sources. Are you part of a dual income earning household? Do you have 2 Social Security checks? Do you have a pension? It looks very different on everyone. And here's the truth. 2 households can go into retirement with $400,000 each in investments and live very different lifestyles. For example, maybe we have one household that is a dual Social Security receiving household, and maybe they have very robust benefits. Maybe one of those individuals has a pension, and they also have $400,000 in investments. Compare that with a single income earning household, one Social Security benefit, and maybe it's a more modest benefit, and $400,000 in investments. These are the same investment level, but we're going to have very different lifestyles in retirement between these two households. At the end of the day, it always comes back to your situation. Run the numbers on your situation, know your lifestyle, know your expenses, and that way you can figure out, is $400,000 enough in investments to provide the lifestyle you want in retirement? Maybe you need more, maybe you need less. Let me know your thoughts on this question down below in the comments. I post new videos every single week. If you got anything at all out of this one, please give it a like. If you're new here, please consider subscribing, or if you know of someone who might get something out of this type of content, please consider sharing. I'll see you soon. Bye. We have trucks driving by non-stop today, and I moved to a quiet neighborhood, so how dare you? I don't know, I think they're working on a road. Unfortunately, life doesn't stop for me. Would be pretty cool if it did. It's like the most selfish thing you can ever say. It was a joke, so no one take that seriously. The number of comments I receive sometimes. It's okay, we can make jokes. They don't hurt anyone. I have to go work on a video for an article I read that really upset me, so stay tuned for that one.